you found a skeleton, how would you tell it's a dinosaur? You personally, how would you decide?
Well, interesting question. I don't know. I'd have to do some research on this.
Hey everybody, welcome to Matt with Maddie 7. This time we're looking at raw Matt, not Matt Powell. We finished with Matt Powell for now, of course. So now we have everyone's favorite guy who looks like he's literally starving because, spoiler alerts, he kinda is. Because, in case you guys didn't know, raw Matt has tried every kind of weird meatless diet out there, including eating nothing but raw honey, eating nothing but a single fruit each month, and also breatharianism, where he just thought that maybe eating was an option, like you just didn't have to if you didn't really want to. So, yeah, fun times. And he also tries to give people medical advice. So, yeah.
I find the new agey idea that, like, if you could just, right, like, eat the right foods and exercise in the right way, like, there exists a magical combination of these that you will, like, live forever, you know, and never ever get sick or age, right? Like, it's such a weird...
That is actually Matt's claim in one of his books. He claims that if you eat the right diet, which he will describe for you, you will neither age nor die.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I was being a little facetious as, like, this seems like the weird logical conclusion of these beliefs, but no, he just straight up says that out loud. Cool.
He's ahead of you already got there.
So
it's also where he publishes his real name, so his real name is public. I'm not using it, but yeah, it's out there. He still promotes that book on his website where he promotes his herbal supplements, because of course he does.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so one of the big reasons we don't like Raw Matt is that he mocked Bill Ludlow's death because apparently Bill Ludlow didn't eat his special plant root concoction that would have prevented his brain cancer.
Yeah, I hate to break it to you there, Uncooked Matthew, but that's not actually how things like cancer and other diseases work.
No, it's not. But hey, let's talk about what we do here, because maybe there's some new people. If you're new, say, hi in the chat. Make sure you hit like. Everyone should hit like. Anyway, we do a little bit of a drinking game. Now, the first thing I have to say about the drinking game is that you are free to play along with any beverage, alcoholic or not, or just simply not play along. It's completely optional. There should be no pressure. If you do play along, please do so responsibly. The Dapper Dino channel doesn't take any responsibility or liability for you following along and then causing, severe bodily injury, mutilation, death, dismemberment, damage to property of yourself, your own property, or anyone else, or their property. That's on you. Be careful. You know your limits, guys, and if you don't play along. That being said, we have a series of drink triggers, and we will take a drink whenever Matt here says something that's just so stupid we kind of have to, because otherwise we'll melt our brains. We'll take a drink whenever Matt gets something actually factually correct without it just being a direct quotation. Doesn't happen much. If he tells a bad joke that doesn't land, we'll take a drink for that. We'll also take a drink if Maddie or I get a prediction correct. So if we say, I think Matt's going this way, and it's, who knows, and we get it right, we'll take a drink there. We will also take a drink if raw Matt mentions certain tragic events or atrocities, including the Columbine shooting, what the National Socialist German Workers' Party was up to in, the early 20th century, or what any of their various leaders or prominent members were up to. We'll also... There's a few ways that the audience can trigger a drink. One is, if you are in fact a channel member, which starts at $1.99, you can hit the join link down below if you want. Then, if you send a super chat with any of the 3 kaiju emojis, we have Godzilla, we have King Ghidorah, and we have Mothra, take a drink. Also, anyone who super chats anything to the effect that AIG are a bunch of dicks, or a bag of dicks, or whatever, will also make us drink, but you have to be careful because YouTube likes to censor that. So, you have to be a little creative. Am I missing any, Maddie?
Yes.
Which one?
You forgot stories that didn't happen.
Stories that didn't happen. I did forget that. Okay, yep. Stories for if we hear a story and we're pretty sure it didn't happen, we'll take a drink for that too. That's more of a Kent Hovind thing. Matt is less want to just make up college professors he was on a plane with for some reason.
Yeah.
So there you go. I think that's it.
Wait, there's also if we hear Godzilla.
Oh, right. Godzilla or Mothra might come by audibly. We'll take a drink
Yeah.
for them if they do. That is a semi-random thing associated with my cell phone. I basically have certain notifications set up to be those sounds, and if those notifications happen, we take a quick drink. Like I said, please be safe. Know your own limits.
Yeah. Team, I'm playing along with water tonight, so...
Yeah, I'm playing along with rum and, well, store-brand cola.
Which sounds so delicious, but I will stick with water.
All right, Maddie, are we ready?
I mean, I'm in unicorn mode, so...
So you're as ready as you're going to be.
I'm as ready as I'm going to be.
All right. Do you have a distress color on your lighting setup so that I know that you're in distress?
Oh, I can't. I can do like we do for D&D and switch it to red.
Oh, that's the distress mode?
That's distress mode.
Okay.
Oh, hold on. It takes me a minute to get back to pink. We can do... Because when we play D&D, we do red for combat.
Yes.
There we go.
All right, here we go. Here's some Matt.
So they said,
Wow.
well, when we look back and we see, well, why don't we see things all starting at the same point in time then? Why do we have these trees of life? Well, guess what?
So, what would it mean for everything to start at the same time?
Yeah, that's a great question, because that sounds like his expectation is like all all mammals suddenly appeared at the exact same time,
Which
right?
They
So
definitely did not.
right, which they certainly didn't, and so
maybe
his
he's-
expectation seems to be that basically that evolution doesn't happen, right? That species, once they come into existence, don't change.
Yeah.
Right? That's the only real reading of that expectation that he's putting out there, right? And so that is what you would expect to see if there had been a creation event, right? You would expect to see everything starting at the same time in the state that we see them today. But
that's not what we see.
But that's not what we see, which is evidence against, which is evidence against a single creation event.
Right. That's why the progressive creationists of the time around when the theory of evolution by natural selection was being proposed were a thing. It's because they noticed that the fossil record, which they knew couldn't fit into a 6,000-year timeline, but they also knew about faunal succession, where there were obviously different sets of organisms around at different times in the past, although they didn't know how long ago those times were.
Question: did discovery of fossils, kind of like the boom in that, did that predate Lord Kelvin's kind of famous calculation of the age of the Earth based off of temperature?
I would have to double check, but my recollection is that those things were roughly contemporaneous.
Okay, yeah, that feels like that was about the same time. But I remember he was like, his calculation was way too short, but it was a lot longer than 6,000 years.
Yeah.
And he was like, wait a minute.
All right, let's get some more Matt in.
But trees of life don't exist even in the best books that they have. Evolution 101 and Tree Thinking are the most modern, up-to-date evolutionist books that there are. And they have multiple trees. None of them have roots, meaning that they don't have a common ancestor that they know of.
I don't think that Raw Matt knows what a root on a phylogeny is. Because, first, I'm going to take a quick drink because Raw Matt continually gets rooting wrong when it comes to phylogenies. So,
yeah, this feels very incorrect.
So, Raw Matt, famously, along with his buddy, Monkey for Banana, as well as creationists generally, have trouble recognizing when a tree in a phylogeny is rooted. So an unrooted tree will kind of look like a starburst, right? Because it basically, all of the lines just indicate distance, like genetic distance between the nodes, and then each tip is some particular group. So
Okay.
you'll get genetic samples from a group, and then you'll say, okay, well, this is a distance-based unrooted phylogeny. When you root it, you take a point on this, and from an unrooted tree, you can't tell where this point is going to be. You stick a little extra bit there. You say, this is where it starts. So from here, it branches into the first two groups, and then they subsequently branch and whatnot. And the way that you do this is you say, there are various statistical analyses, but one of the easiest to understand is you say, okay, groups that share a mutation are more likely to have shared that mutation because of a common ancestor than because they both happen to separately have the same mutation. Because any one mutation is very unlikely to occur in any lineage. So if they share a mutation, that's much more likely to be because of common ancestry than it is because of coincidental identical mutations. So you'll say, okay, well, these two groups don't share really any common mutations between them. They both seem to have separate mutations all the way down. So that's your first split. Then you say, okay, within one of those groups, where do we have common mutations? Now, I'm vastly oversimplifying this. Like, there's a lot of statistical analysis, and there's multiple different ways to draw the trees, whether it be like Bayesian inference, parsimony, all sorts of stuff. But first blush, yeah. But the thing is, creationists, many of them, even professionals, like to do things like show unrooted mitochondrial and Y chromosome phylogenies, and then just pick a spot and say that that represents the descendants of some biblical character.
Yeah.
Like, famously, the human Y chromosome unrooted phylogeny has 3 really big nodes where a lot of things branch out from there in a bunch of polytomies, which just means it's a node with more than one branch coming off of it. And they just say that, oh, that's the 3 sons of Noah.
By the way, I just popped in our Discord chat a picture of the complete tree of life as it is known.
Yeah, that's another thing, is that it is there. I don't have a quick way to get this on screen.
Yeah, I don't know how to do that either. I don't have a quick way to show it to people. I could put the link in the chat.
Do that.
Okay, let me do that.
Okay.
Team. So if I'm distracted, but so like the point is, like, I don't know, because Matt is also saying that like there exists no such.
Yeah, it's actually
thing.
trivially easy to find a chart of the ancestry of life. Now, granted, there's too many organisms for them to put all of them on there, so they use representative samples. Like, I think one of the most famous ones that I've seen, the closest example to, or the closest animal to humans on the list, because humans were on there, was Rattus rattus, which is like the common European, like, brown rat or something.
Okay.
It's like, that's not terribly close to humans as far as mammals go, although it's a lot closer than horses, say.
Yeah, but also, so yeah, what I'm going to show, it's certainly when you make the whole tree of life, it is so dense as to be unuseful, right? But it certainly exists and has existed for a while. There you go. I put a link in the chat.
So I think what he might be complaining about is people taking a portion of the tree of life, of all life, and then saying, this is what we're showing you. We're showing you some of it, which is a completely fine thing to do. Like, if you're examining phylogeny of, say, all extant canines, you don't also connect them to, like, rodents and pangolins and horses. Like, why would you do that?
Yeah. Yeah, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And even, for like my own work, when I'm concerned about like Arctic weather, I'm rarely concerned about like hurricane season doesn't bother me, just as a example from a different field. Like,
right.
Obviously in the big global sense, these two things interact and are related, but for the scale of things I am looking at, it doesn't matter. It doesn't have a statistically significant influence.
Right.
So like, again, if you look at the whole thing all at once, it is dense to the point of being useless. It is unreadable. So you're going to look at a subsection.
Drink from Mothra.
So much Mothra.
That's actually one Mothra bit. The
That's
sound
one Mothra?
Yeah, the sound effect I have is basically all of her calls from like the Showa era.
Oh, okay.
Who, by the way, Mothra every once in a while in some of the English dubs gets referred to with masculine pronouns in some of the Showa era stuff, and I don't like it.
Blasphemy.
Yeah. I mean, she's always laying eggs, man. Come on. Anyway, let's get some more raw Matt in.
They just say,
Okay.
well, we can't look back that far. Oh, that's convenient, isn't it? You can't look back that far. Oh, that's really
I have no
wonderful.
idea what he's
So you're
talking
just going
about.
to tell people lies because you don't know. That's really good. That's what kids need to hear. Just made up myths. So you don't have evidence. There's nothing that's testable, repeatable, or observable, but yet.
I mean,
No.
here's the fun thing about phylogenies. They're literally based on DNA sequences, which you can recollect, you can resequence, and then you can rerun the statistical analyses. Everything about a phylogeny is 100% testable, observable, and repeatable.
Yeah, and we're also we can see evolution like occurring and speciation occurring in real time with species that reproduce fast enough for us to be able to observe that, right? Like, so I hate to break it to you there, Uncooked Matthew, but everything about evolution, right, and the basic processes that govern it is in fact observable, testable, and repeatable. Going back in time listen team, I'm not a biologist, right? I'm in my PhD program for meteorology. I have a background in like math and physical sciences. But like when I know from just my own field, when we're getting data from going back in time, right, that doesn't mean that data is not good or made up. It's like the error bars on it tend to be a little bit bigger, right? But that doesn't mean it's unuseful or not saying true things, right? We just understand that there's a little more, it's harder to be super precise. And that's not hidden from view from anyone, right? That's openly reported, That's not a gotcha. That's a...
So real quick, we have a couple super chats. One from Josiah Hansen, who says, I hope this doesn't get me in trouble. AIGing, the act of pulling a scrotum up, trapping your member in the bag-like pouch created, normally done to imitate androgynous aliens or Ken Ham. We'll take a drink for that.
Ooh, like that one.
Scott Duke for $1.99 says AIG are a satchel of schlongs. Correct. Take
Love
a drink
it.
for that too. In case
I'm
anyone
gonna
here
be
doesn't,
so hydrated.
in case anyone here doesn't know why we have this rule, AIG basically just likes to fraudulently copyright claim essentially everything that has any of their footage in it. And then as a creator, myself as well as others, like this is a thing that's affected Arnra, Pelagia, Vice Rhino. I think it's affected Dancer and Cardinal. Not positive on that one. But anyway, it's affected Erica, Guts of Gibbon. As a creator, you just have to sit there and contest them, and then when they come back, they're always like, yeah, okay, fine, we'll let you use it. But in the meantime, your video was not generating any revenue for the channel and was usually getting fewer hits because when stuff like that happens, YouTube tends to de-emphasize those videos in the algorithm. So for those of you who didn't know, that's why we drink about AIG being a bunch of dicks, because they are. So here we go. Let's get... Also, I picked a great frame to pause Matt on. Look at that face. Wonderful.
It's true. Yeah, I don't think so. Sorry. I'm not going to play that game. That's not true at all. That's not real.
Actual incredulity as the argument. Just blatantly, I don't believe you, bro. I'm just going to take a drink for just openly using incredulity. Like, usually people hide it.
Yeah, the argument from incredulity is one of my favorites that pops up where I'm just like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do with that, friend. Like, I gave you all this evidence and you just said, nuh-uh. You know?
Now, I mean, look, it is okay for people to have different levels of, like, required evidence before they accept the proposition. But
that's not incredulity. That is...
Just be like
so... Yeah, that fails to meet my standard of evidence. So, for example... I had a conversation with my husband about this a couple days ago. He is firmly like, ghosts are real, I have seen them, right? And I'm like, I don't really believe in ghosts. And he was like, but like, I've had a personal experience and I have this photo, right? And so I was like, well, that's cool, right? And I'm not saying that you did not have that individual experience, right? But because it is unreproducible, right? I don't find that to be like proof that ghosts are real,
Right.
right?
You don't believe, but you have reasons as to why the provided evidence does not seem convincing.
Right. Yeah, that's the thing. And so it's really funny because my husband is a lawyer, and so and his undergrad is in history. So our worlds are very different of he often thinks about things that only happened once, right? And I'm like, that's science cares 0% about that.
Yeah. The law has to, though.
The law absolutely has to. So we tend to think about
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, so we think about things like this very differently. So we have different standards of evidence for believing things.
Yeah.
Because of our professions and the way we've been taught to think. And so if Rob Matthew was saying the evidence that has been presented to me, I don't find sufficient, right? That would be one thing, but not meh, you're dumb. That's not helpful, or that doesn't mean anything. That's just you can't do anything with that.
Yeah.
Because then if you ask the question, what would be your standard of evidence, right? And for me, for ghosts, right? That would be if I straight up met a ghost and had a chat with them, right? That would convince me that at least one ghost exists.
Right.
Right.
Which would then open up the possibility of others.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely.
Very few classes of object have only one example.
True. Okay, sorry. Let's get back. Let's let him talk some more.
Right. Absolutely. That's great.
No, it's not.
You're doing a good job so far, right? Keep on going. I like it.
Certainly you're not doing a good job, friend.
No.
All
right.
About this, we know by the medical database that there's over 12,000...
The medical database.
Which one?
There's only one, Maddie. Come on.
Oh, no.
Deleterious mutations added to the database every single year. That means that there is more disease this year than there was last year. And there...
No, take a drink.
No, that's not what that means, friend.
What that means is because of disorders has been investigated and determined to be some genetic variant, which then gets entered in. Okay, so imagine back to, say, 1940, when no one even knew that DNA was the molecule of inheritance.
Mm-hmm.
Did the genetic disorders that we have today still exist? Well, yeah. In fact, in many cases, people even knew they were genetic because they knew they were passed down in families, and they could do things like, twin studies, like, hey, identical twins always have this, they both always either have or don't have this disorder, things like that. So what we're doing now is not just having a bunch of new deleterious mutations. We're just finding the ones that already exist. And the reason I can say that they're probably not new, even if in your line they happen de novo, is because humans are what's called mutation saturated. At any given time, every single possible point mutation that could occur in a human genome has occurred in some human individual somewhere.
Okay.
So they're all covered. They already are statistically virtually guaranteed to exist. We're not getting new ones, even when they come up de novo in a line.
Yeah.
So still, we're just cataloging things that already exist.
Yeah, and we also have... So now, not only do we understand genetics, we also have more and better tools to find these types of mutations, right? That's which didn't exist even 10 or 20 years ago. And so that is even if all of the information he just presented is in fact true, right? He didn't provide a citation. I don't know what the medical database is.
As far as I know, it is true that more and more disorders are being cataloged as genetic disorders after the underlying cause has been... that is a thing.
Okay.
A similarity might be, there are people who sometimes talk about how, we're getting so much more incidence of autism. When in fact what's actually happening is, one, we're better at diagnosing autism, and two, the number of things that fall under the spectrum of autism has increased. And
Yeah.
you combine those two things, and like, yeah, diagnoses of autism spectrum disorders are going to go up.
Right. And we also have separated like autism and what is it? IDD, intellectual.
I don't really know the acronym, sorry.
It's like intellectual developmental delay. There we go. I think that's what that is. Or developmental disability, right? So so those two things are separate, right? Like being autistic does not mean that you will also like not be otherwise mentally normal. You know what I mean? Or otherwise develop intellectually and, maturely, do you know what I mean?
Yep.
Like it doesn't necessarily come with severe intellectual deficits. But individuals with severe intellectual deficits often also have autistic traits.
Yeah.
So we've separated those because, it used to be only the most severe cases were, and the most severe cases of autism that were accompanied with those like intellectual and developmental disabilities and delays.
Yeah. It's almost like we're getting a better picture of what was always going on. And now we have better language and better ability to describe and talk about it. Anyway, here's Raw Matt spewing nonsense.
There will be twice as many next year. So it's just compounding. And every year we get more and more and more.
I just love the fact that we're using entries in a hypothetical database to indicate that new mutations are occurring, which is not how that works.
But I bet if we take his herbal supplements, then we'll be protected from mutations.
True. Well, you'll be protected because you'll be immortal, according to him, and you'll stop aging. So
yeah.
I mean, now when actually I was going to say when Matt starts going gray, but I just realized he'd probably just keep dyeing his hair to pretend and using this really low res webcam so we can't see all the wrinkles.
Yeah.
There's certain people who just high-res images just don't exist of them.
Well, if we go back in time, we find less disease.
No, we don't.
No,
we find
really
more, if
don't.
anything. I'm gonna take a drink.
We find so much more.
Now, do we find more genetic disease? No, probably not. For the same reason I just pointed out, that humans are basically mutation saturated. So it's now,
but we find a whole lot more cholera.
Oh yeah. Basically any kind of infectious disease, we find a whole lot of it more going back. Now, to be fair, he's talking about genetic diseases, but the fact that we didn't know about the existence of the genetic factors underlying disorders doesn't mean they didn't exist. In fact, there's a whole like sub-branch in archaeology looking at the remains of people who have identifiable genetic problems like hydrocephaly or various like musculoskeletal conditions and things like that, and looking at like how did the society around them interact with people with these disorders? And we find the same disorders that we have today.
That sounds like a really cool field.
It is. It's actually really interesting. We even have some things like Paleolithic people with severe disabilities who would have been just incapable of taking care of themselves or significantly contributing to like the calorie gathering of their hunter-gatherer society. And they're like making it well into adulthood. There was one case, I think it was in India, there was a girl who, she made it to adulthood, but she wasn't very old. I think she died in her like 20s. But in addition to having severe disabilities, she also had really bad teeth, presumably because her friends and family were bringing her sweet fruit to eat, and it caused her teeth to go bad because she was eating too much sugar. So I just thought it was kind of sweet because they're like, oh no, she really enjoys these sweet fruits and things, so we're just gonna bring her as much as she can have. So yeah, it's
turns out
humans are kind of cool.
Take care of each other. It's a thing we do.
Yeah, humans aren't always terrible. They're often terrible. Don't get me wrong.
We're often terrible, but
Not always.
We got some shining moments in there.
Yeah. So anyway, here we go.
So we have to assume now, based on logic, reasoning, and observational science, that we're degrading because of this. Evolution tells us the opposite happens, that we're maintaining strongest survival of the fittest. We're getting bigger, better, stronger, faster, and meaner.
Okay, so here's a fun thing about all these genetic disorders. You know why they don't actually tend to spread through the population? It's because of natural selection. If you have a genetic disorder that's severe enough that it hampers your ability to reproduce, because let's say you're not going to make it that long, or it affects fertility or things like that, or in some cases humans actually make the conscious decision that I don't want this disorder to be passed on by me, so I will opt not to have biological children. Yeah. And so they're not degrading. It's just that, these things always exist. They exist in all populations. Like, we know of other animals with genetic disorders. It happens. But, they don't spread through the population because of natural selection. Now, you could argue that the voluntary, non-reproduction might be a kind of artificial selection. In fact, technically, I think it counts as eugenics. But, if you decide that you're not going to reproduce, I don't get to decide that that's not okay because technically it's eugenics.
Yeah.
For me, eugenics is when other people decide whether or not you get to reproduce.
Right. Like, I have this really terrible thing and I don't want anyone else to suffer with it. So something that immediately jumps to my mind would be like cystic fibrosis, which even with the most modern medicine, people with that tend to only live into their maybe their 30s. And if you have it's a recessive gene. So if you and your partner have both the recessive genes, your kids have a 25% chance of, having this disease. So I've known a couple who have a child he's now an adult, but with cystic fibrosis, and their intent was to not have any more children. They didn't know they had that recessive gene until he was born. And their intent was to not have any other children. There is an oops in there, and they had a second one who didn't, but I mean, because it was, this one child is going to take all of our care and attention, because they have special medical needs.
It's a tough thing.
We don't want to risk having right. So that's such a personal choice.
Yeah.
Anyway.
All right. Well, here we go.
But the opposite's true. We're finding people are riddled with disease more than ever before. We're degrading as a species since the fall of man.
Yeah, we're the healthiest we've ever been as a species. We live longer.
It has been the case for the entire life of basically everyone in this chat that on a broad scale, like a global scale, it has never been a better time to be a human than in the current year, with some bumps here and there along the way, but that's been a pretty broad trend for the entire life of everyone here.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, here we go.
Like the Bible talks about, man has been degrading as time goes on, and that's
okay.
The Bible doesn't really talk about that.
No, that's inferred.
Yeah, you have to take a very tortured approach to exegesis, or actually eisegesis in this case.
Because you got to go with the fall of man, right? The world was perfect, then man sinned and messed everything up, and it's just we've just fallen further and further and further from that state of perfection. But also that completely ignores again, so this is all theological arguments at this point, but the point then of the story of the Messiah, of Jesus coming and dying and being resurrected, right, is to reset, right? So that we can there's the theology there that is then the goal is now we come closer and closer to perfection, right? That's a pretty common theology. I didn't make that up, I promise. I'm not a theologian.
The technical term there is theosis, and it is in fact a very long-standing tradition in Christianity.
Yeah, so that's don't you love it when I can theologically take down their argument?
It's honestly their theology isn't much better thought out than their science. It's
really not.
Yeah.
It's not much better thought out, which is upsetting. And I guess I really hammered Matt Powell with this when he is trying to be a pastor. I should not know more theology than him because I am not trying to do that.
Well, the fun thing is whenever someone calls him a pastor, he's like, "Now hold up. I'm not actually a pastor." And it's like, look, dude, you get up and give sermons in churches. I don't care.
Yeah, you're trying to make a living in preaching. What else am I supposed to call you?
But that's the other
Matt. Yeah, but that's the other Matt. So, but this guy, I don't think he's trying to like preach, you know?
I've never seen him give what I would call a sermon, so I don't think he's trying to do that. No.
Right. So I have lower expectations for his knowledge of theology, but
That's
still,
fair.
like,
You shouldn't beat him on that front.
I still shouldn't beat him on that front.
All right.
Anyway.
With what we see.
I'll play devil's advocate here.
Oh, good.
What if they would say,
Good.
well,
Love
we're
it.
just degrading because of the man-made chemicals that we're doing, and it's not it's not the evolution that's making us degrade. It's just that, oh, we're just killing ourselves with all these pollutants and everything. Could that be an
We
argument
really aren't,
against
though. Like,
That's a weird argument for someone to make because it's kind of dumb.
yeah. Listen, climate change is real and very bad, and we should do something about it, right?
Mhm.
So if we're thinking about pollutants, right? So pollutants affect human health in many ways. One, we're seeing, right, you can see this right now, increased wildfires, increased drought conditions. We're increasing probability of these extreme events. We're seeing more desertification. So if we didn't have like global supply chains, food would be a lot more scarce, you know? So we are certainly doing things that aren't great for humans, right? In terms of pollution. And then on a more local level, I think you are seeing in urban areas an uptick in asthma. Don't quote me on that, but respiratory issues are definitely associated with man-made pollutants. However, you're not likely to die from an asthma attack in the modern world.
No, that's the other thing is what ill effects have been occurring because of pollution on the global scale, right? There are always going to be local exceptions, but on the global scale, humans are living longer than ever, and that's despite problems with pollution. So while there are there are definitely problems there, on the whole, people are having an easier time living into their old age than they did before when we had less pollution. Now, that's not because of the pollution, right? Like Maddie said, it's because of advances in medical care. So sure, things would be even better if we had less pollution and medical advancements. Okay.
Right.
But also, pollution doesn't generally just cause genetic diseases. Because you got to remember, the context here isn't just disease in general. It's genetic disorders. So the real thing that someone might say is, because this guy's devil's advocate is really dumb. The devil should not be advocating this way. Instead, what the devil should say is something like, what if the reason that we're seeing relatively high incidence of genetic disorders is because as a result of advances in medical care, fewer people are selected out of the population because of the genetic disorders that they have. Instead, more of them survive to reproduce. Which is a real thing. That's a real thing.
Yeah, that's real. That would be the correct devil's advocacy here. But I feel like these two are both deep into conspiracy land.
Oh, yeah. If you have raw Matt on, you're a nutbag.
Yeah. Like, they probably think GMOs are evil, when in reality, we could not feed, like, ourselves without GMOs, you know? We have so many people we need to have genetically modified food so that it's more of it lives, you know?
Yeah, the crop failure rate is too high with heirloom seeds, shall we say.
Correct. Now, hey, I love me a good heirloom tomato. Those are delicious, right?
But it's a luxury food. It's not a staple.
It is. It's a luxury food.
And one thing is, we're not going to get back into the ethics about patenting living organisms.
No.
Which is weird.
There's definitely ethical problems. There's definitely issues of like monopolies existing, right, within that world, and that we could spend a whole thing. But like, just the science of genetically modified food, there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. And again, the world's population would be unsustainable without it.
Yeah. All right, here we go.
You're saying?
It would be if these things weren't testable, meaning we can see the compounded thing by looking in the human genome, meaning we don't have to just look at our generation and go, oh, well, I wonder how many more mutations will be in the next one. We see that, but we can extrapolate and go back in time. So
every generation is going to have all of them, Matt. All of the mutations, every generation. It's already a thing.
Yeah. And I like, so he's using really interesting language here, which is, oh, we can do X, Y, Z, blah, blah, blah. When I say that, right, I generally mean either me or people I directly know have done this or can do this, or this is a thing that you and I could go do right now. So like when I talk about weather stuff, like we could go look at this data from Mount Everest right this second, right? We can do that. Like what he's talking about is not a thing that he is capable of doing. So I don't know who the we is in this sentence. He means
humanity.
Like but I mean he's clearly referring to a very specific group of specially trained scientists who have the technical skills and laboratory tools, equipment to do these things, right? While at the same time, these are also people who like would say evolution is real.
Right, yeah.
Right.
Who
and
disagree
so
strongly with Matt about virtually everything.
Exactly. So you believe them when they say X, but not when they say Y, when both are coming from the same people with the same resources, with the same degree. So like, what's your justification there? Like, because this is not, it sounds like he's claiming this is like research he has done when it certainly is not. Right.
Yeah. Raw Matt. I've seen Raw Matt try to do research.
Honey, no.
In one case, it resulted with him saying that a certain animal didn't have molars, while also on the same publication, shall we say, having pictures of its molars. Yeah. So, here we go.
Listen, let's keep going.
That's the level of intellect we're dealing with here.
Yeah.
Before there was modernization of industrialization, chemicals and compounds, and
I'm just going to take a drink for rampant hemophobia.
Before chemicals existed.
Before chemicals existed was, like, the first stages of the Big Bang.
Yeah. I'm enjoying some delicious dihydrogen monoxide.
Mm.
And things that have never existed since crude oil was invented, because 500 different...
Crude oil was invented! It's not like it just occurs naturally or anything. Someone in a lab invented crude oil and injected it into the planet with a big syringe. That's how oil works, guys.
Oh no!
Invented crude oil. That's a new one on me.
Damn.
Goodness. All right.
Things come from crude oil. Now all of a sudden we have these. We go back to the Renaissance era, and we find the same problem existed. They were riddled with disease, right. and it was coming more and more and more. Of course, they had. It
wasn't coming more and more and more than it had before. Have you never heard of things like the plague of Justinian?
Yeah.
Like there have been plagues throughout human history.
Yeah.
It's good to know that Matt is as good at history as he is at everything else.
Yeah, and I don't know, I've said this to Matt Powell, and I'll say this to a lot of young Earth creationists, but if you want to sit at the big kids table and chat about some of this stuff, you have to do the work.
Yeah.
Right? So if we can't go 5 seconds of your video without dying laughing because of the inaccuracies, you have not put in the work.
Correct.
Right? So you need to at the bare minimum, read non-creationist sources just to debunk them. You don't have to believe it, but you have to know the arguments. You should know how to steel man evolution. I can steel man creationism, right? You and I can both do that.
Oh, yeah. I can come up with much better creationist ideas than most creationists do.
Oh, absolutely. So like you have to put in the work, and Raw Matt here clearly has not. Yeah. Which is why we make fun of him on the internet.
That is why.
Things like the Black Plague, which set everybody really far back, but I'm talking about they still had cancer, heart disease, and diabetes, but it was very minimal.
Yeah, because people were dying of plague before they could die of heart disease, Matt.
Yeah,
if
man.
You die at 30 of the Black Death, you're not going to get lung cancer at 60. My goodness, I'm taking a drink.
Yeah, so...
Heart disease and cancer are diseases of the elderly, basically, is what happens.
Yes. So I am quoting my, sophomore year biology professor who is a cancer researcher, who said that age-adjusted cancer rates have not increased ever. That is, the older you are, the more likely you are to get cancer. We live longer now, so there are more instances of cancer because people are living long enough to get it.
Basically, if you live long enough, you're going to get cancer.
Yeah, absolutely. If you live long enough, you will get cancer. It's a thing.
Yeah. And the other thing is the incidence of things like heart disease also go up with age. So yeah, of course we have more cancer and more heart disease now. People are going to die of something. And it's usually not the Black Death anymore.
It's usually not. We can treat the Black Death.
This is a man who published a book stating that he could make people immortal by having them eat the right collection of herbs. So maybe Matt doesn't think that this is an inevitability. So I don't know.
Maybe.
Now it's very high. And it's not just because of that. It's been growing ever since then. Like, we can go back.
You mean as the life expectancy has been growing, the instance of diseases that tend to affect older people have gone up? Oh my goodness. Let's get the news here. We gotta talk about this. This is so everyone expects this, Matt. This is like
shocked face.
This is baby level, like what diseases affect which people and why do they change in prevalence.
This
is like baby's first biology. Come on, friend.
Back, and we can see Lyme disease was even one of the first people that they found, the Iceman. He had Lyme disease in his body. So we know that diseases still existed in people. So we're just finding that it's compounding. And we know that
Lyme disease isn't genetic, Matt.
It's not genetic. That's transmitted by critters.
Yes. Ticks carry a parasite.
Ticks. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
The database for cancer said that in 10 years from now, cancer will be double what it is now. That's a 50% rise.
Yeah, because eventually you're going to get cancer if you don't die of something else first.
Yeah, so why are cancer rates going to be double? Let's chat about that. People are living longer. Mm-hmm. We are getting better and better at both treating and detecting cancer, right? We're getting better, and as a public consciousness, we're aware of the necessity for early testing, right? So again, thinking about catching things early, right? So more testing means we'll find more of it. We keep life expectancy tends to go up most years, So there's a lot of factors, and cancer can have and often has a genetic, you may be genetically predisposed, right? Some people are genetically predisposed, but cancer itself is not a genetic disorder.
Oh, and it's been pointed out in chat, by the way, that Matt had said a 50% increase, and then he just switched that to doubling.
Which
I didn't even test it.
That would be
he said 50%.
a 100% increase, friend.
Right. Yeah,
he said so many other dumb things. We missed the math.
Yeah, you can't catch all of it because it's just so dense. There's so much dumbness.
There's so much.
You might even say that raw Matt here is so dense as to be useless. That's what we call a callback.
That's incredibly high.
Thank you.
So if we're adapting to things and we're evolving, we would evolve to get rid of these things. We wouldn't be weaker to them, and that's exactly...
Okay, take a drink. My goodness.
Okay, you take a drink. I'm going to take a shot at explaining it, okay?
Okay.
All right. Okay. There is no mechanism by which evolution and specifically natural selection would not select for most cancers beyond childhood cancer, right? If there's a genetic predisposition to those, because diseases of the elderly, right, do not influence your ability to reproduce when you were younger.
Yep.
I did it! I did a biology!
You did. It's true. These are all diseases that tend to affect people after their reproductive career, which means that the only selection pressure is going to be kin selection, where maybe your grandkids aren't going to do as well if grandma or grandpa isn't around, but that's pretty minor.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
exactly what we are. And, animals would be evolving to global warming. They're dying at a mass extinction rate.
There's only so fast that organisms can evolve.
Yeah.
And if changes to the environment happen faster than they can adapt, it's going to cause die-offs. Now, if climate change is a permanent, irreversible thing, which at this point it is, eventually, after a whole bunch of extinction, the remaining organisms will have an adaptive radiation and adapt to the new climate. But that's a thing that's going to occur on the order of tens to hundreds of thousands of years, not a few centuries.
Yeah, so for example, like the thing that's really concerning about climate change, right, is if we think about the average global temperature as it was at the end of the last ice age to the average global temperature as it was in about 1900, right at the when the it's you'd usually use like the start of the Industrial Revolution, so like mid to late 1800s, but let's just use 1900 as an easy number. Right. So the difference in temperature there between when was the end of the last ice age, like 60,000 years ago?
Well, I mean, it depends on exactly how we using like a glacial maximum or.
Yeah. When was the last glacial maximum?
I think that's about right because technically an ice age is anytime there's permanent ice. And so.
So technically we're in an ice age, but anyway, so let's think about the end of the last ice age. The last glacial maximum was about 60,000 years. The average global temperature warmed by about 4 degrees Celsius over 60,000 years, right?
That seems
between
very adaptable. You have plenty of time.
Since 1900, and mostly within my lifetime, average global temperature has warmed by about 1.5 degrees. Yep. Right? So 4 degrees in 60,000 years.
Oh, 10,000? Oh, for the last glacial maximum, 10,000? Is that? We're just going to double check it. Because you know what?
Yes, please.
I'm a Mesozoic guy. You ask me about, like, Holocene crap, and I'm like, "Rrr."
Listen, I don't think earlier, for science, I never think earlier than 1979, because that is the start of the satellite era, and when we could actually start studying the Arctic.
I'm also getting about 20,000 years ago. So look, tens of thousands is the order of magnitude we're talking about.
Yeah.
And the order of magnitude that we're talking about for climate change is hundreds.
In 100 years, we warmed by 1.5 degrees. So that's what's scary. And that is why animals are finding it very incredibly difficult to adapt because these changes, significant climate changes are happening within the lifetime of a single individual. That's not enough time for natural selection to occur.
I also want to say, Arachamian has donated $20 via Super Chat. I want to say thank you very much for that. I really appreciate it. There was no message. So, thank you.
Okay.
Let's see. So, we're getting pretty close to a break, but we're going to get a little bit more in after I make sure that I have the right intermission video set up, because I also have another intermission video that would get this stream copyright claimed immediately.
Oh, no.
Well, so it's for a little show that we're doing tomorrow that we'll talk about a little bit after the break.
I'm so excited.
Here we go.
Losing the bees extremely fast. If evolution was true, they would evolve with the rising temperature.
So, fun thing, bees as a group are not going extinct. However, native bees in much of the world are being displaced to the benefit, I suppose, of the European honeybee and to the detriment of local native plants. So, bees aren't going anywhere as a group. However, many individual species of bees are in big trouble, and not just as a result of climate change, but also as a result of agricultural practices by humans. Agriculture is not great for native environments, to put it mildly. Also, fun fact, farming plants actually ends up killing more animals than farming for meat, because huge numbers of animals are killed in harvesters. Those things just sweep up mice and voles and all sorts of little critters by the 100.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. You would actually kill fewer animals, or your dietary practices would kill fewer animals if you only ate meat than if you were a vegan.
Don't tell the vegans.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why, even if all of the ethical guidelines or ethical arguments for veganism are convincing, I don't have an option that doesn't result in me killing untold numbers of animals to survive. So I literally can't choose any option that would meet those criteria, so I'm not going to try. Because I'm also not going to starve to death. So there you go.
Yeah.
Right. So what you're talking about, there's like a genetic degrading that's going on. The genes are going down. It's not just that we're getting more chronic illness. It's actually something in the genes.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. It's called deleterious mutation buildup, and it's altering our genes. Like, did you know that there's a 50% of the people right now, actually, no, 90% of people right now
Just making up numbers.
Just making it up. Love
have
it.
a genetic disposition to obtaining a defect called MTHFR. Methfer. I don't even know how to say it because it doesn't have any vowels. Methfer. I don't know. It's a gene mutation that gets inherited, and if you inherit it, actually, there's 14 different types of this gene mutation, but only two really seem to matter because they affect you at a very bad rate. The one of them, they affects you either at 20 to 40%, and the other one affects you either 20 to 70%. So if you
have you understood any of what was just happening?
Okay,
It's all just
so
been incomprehensible to me. There's a mutation that exists,
there exists a genetic mutation
and it's allegedly
that-
bad,
that has 12 different forms, but only 2 of them are bad.
right? And they're
And
40% bad, I guess.
yeah, so let's see if he finishes what
Okay.
you now have a 20 to 70 or 20 to 40% chance of what, friend?
inherit either one of these, the minimum it'll affect you is 20%. And
Of
the
what?
reason that this is detrimental is because that it directly correlates to how well you're going to methylate. And methylate, think of the word as a detoxification, how well your cells are going to clean up debris.
Okay, this is made up. This is
Oh.
pseudoscience. Yeah, this is because
I'm
like
taking a drink.
yeah. Hold on a minute.
Goodness.
Listen, friend. So you have to say, like, just saying this affects you 20 to 70% means literally nothing. I don't know what you're trying to say. So if you're trying to say that, like, you're now 20 to 70% less efficient at this process, I don't know if that's what you mean, but that's the closest, sense I can make out of that dribble. But then he immediately went into the phrase like detoxify. So this feels very made up to me. This feels very new age woo woo.
I'm going to give you the Dapper Dino detoxification plan. This is how you're going to get all the detoxification you need in 2022. Okay, ready?
Love it.
Have at least one kidney. Have a
Done.
liver. Have both be disease-free. There you go.
Love it.
You've just completed your detox for 2022.
Huzzah!
Also, I do want to
did
point one
it.
thing out before we go on break, which has to do with the meat thing. So while I don't see a way to accept the ethical arguments for veganism and then also continue to not starve, I will say it is a good idea to cut back on your meat consumption because the environmental impact of meat agriculture is significantly higher. So it's much worse for the environment to eat large amounts of meat. So that's one of the reasons why also because meat has become extremely expensive in the last few months. But also, in addition, I do try to eat less meat than I otherwise would because it is more sustainable. So we're going to take a break. And guys, eat less meat. But not because you're trying to avoid the suffering of animals, because you don't have that option available to you. And here comes an intermission. All right, everybody, welcome back. So we had a little break there, and so before we get right back into it, we're going to have a little bit of a commercial time. One thing is, I am still doing a Patreon drive. I am $41 away from the goal, which is really close. So if you are someone who has the money, I don't want this if you don't have the money, and you would like to consider financially backing the channel so that this channel can be sustainable indefinitely, then please do go ahead and check out the Patreon. It starts at as little as $1 a month. You get early access to about 2 months worth of videos. So there's usually somewhere around like 7 to 10 videos on early access at any given time, months in advance. You also will get access to the special Discord server that's only for patrons and YouTube channel members. You will get, there's other things like mentions in credits and whatnot at various tiers. And on Patreon, you can also get a 10% discount, or no, I think it's a 12% discount if you go for the annual rather than the monthly. So I actually just had a few people join at the annual, with the annual option just a few days ago. So please do consider it. And if you can't afford it, then please don't. And if you want to support the channel and you can't do anything like that, I mean, like the video, share the video, comment, you know, spread it around, help the YouTube algorithm notice me senpai algorithm, or I guess technically algorithm senpai, since like most languages, Japanese uses titles and honorifics after the name. English is weird. It's like one of the only ones that uses them before the name, but whatever. The other thing is, Maddie, tomorrow, we're going to be streaming together again.
We are! I'm so excited. Sorry, Jim, I'm eating a PB&J right now, so I was really hungry. But can I tell them about it? Because I'm super stoked.
Absolutely. Go ahead.
Okay, so tomorrow on Top Hats Off at 6 Central, we are going to be playing a Power Rangers tabletop RPG game. And guys, I get to play this time. I don't have to I'm not GMing. Our good friend Dapper here is GMing.
Correct.
And I'm so excited. I have a sweet, wonderful biology student named Claire Masters, who is whose whole world is about to change.
Yes.
So come see the fun, and then this is the game that we will now play on weeks when we don't play D&D, where I DM over on Cheshire Vic's channel, Guns, Magic, and Steel. So all of your favorite science nerds, guys, we're nerds in so many ways. We love tabletop RPGs. Yep. So we play D&D. We play Power Rangers tabletop games. And we film all of it and stream it for your pleasure and enjoyment.
Absolutely. So any of my and Smitty is in the chat. He will also be there. Maddie is our Blue Ranger. Smitty is our Red Ranger. TD Lane is not here, but he's going to be our White Ranger. We also have a Black and a Yellow Ranger who are not in the chat, but they totally exist, believe me. So if any of my mods could put a link to Top Hats Off, or even just that video, it's also my most recent tweet. Much appreciated. But hey, we're not here for Power Rangers, unfortunately. It would be more fun. Instead, we're here for Matt, who would be a terrible Power Ranger, I think.
So this, essentially, if you inherit this, which 90% of the people in the world do, you are not going to methylate anywhere from 40 to 70% worse, or actually 70 plus 20% if you get the minimum. So up to 100% worse methylation.
So you're just never going to methylate anything? That's not how these numbers work, Matt.
70 plus 20 is 90.
Yep, not 100. I'm just going to take a drink because the math doesn't work. It doesn't make any sense. It's all about weird detox woo. I don't even know where we're going here.
You're going to
inherit. So this doesn't make any sense. And so even if there is like a nugget of truth to any of this, right? Like I'm sure there exists a genetic mutation that decreases your body's ability to methylate, right?
That seems entirely plausible.
That seems super plausible. But he's describing it so poorly, I don't know what's happening. You know?
Yeah, it's bizarre.
Yeah. Oh, and apparently he can't add.
Good news, everybody. I did not accidentally stream to Cheshire Vic's channel Because when we first started today, I still had her stream key here because I produced our last D&D session, which meant I had to stream to her channel for that. And so I hit go live, and I'm like, how come YouTube isn't getting my broadcast? And oh, right, because I have her stream key, not mine. So, yeah, the good news is apparently I did not accidentally create a 10-second stream on her channel. Here we go.
And that's a genetic default that you inherit, and almost everybody has it.
Oh,
so that's utter proof that it's rampant in society. And if we were genetic, if we were evolving, we would be evolving those out of the system. It wouldn't be coming in.
Only if it actually affects your reproductive output, right? So, and this is a real thing, right? Where medical science is reducing the strength of selection on the human population. And as a result, it is the case that it is possible for people who are carriers or even people who have what would otherwise have been deadly genetic disorders to reproduce. And so there is an argument to be had that that is going to cause problems for humanity as a whole. Because, these are in fact unfortunate conditions to have, even if they don't necessarily impact your ability to reproduce in the modern world. And so, yeah, there's a whole discussion to have around that. But the idea that you can go from that to then genetics is just inherently degrading and genetic entropy and all that nonsense, it doesn't work that way. You can't get from A to B that way. Because the thing is, if genetic entropy, which is what Matt's talking about here, is a real phenomenon, then it's going to be a real phenomenon for organisms that aren't being saved by extensive medical intervention. Right? Are the wolves in the wild having this problem? No.
No. Oh, also, can I just say that I hate the phrase genetic entropy makes me want to cringe because it demonstrates a fundamental lack of understanding of what entropy is.
Oh, apparently people can't hear Mothra? I guess she's not picking up on my microphone.
Oh, that's no fun.
Well, I will turn her up a little bit. Thank you for telling me. It should be audible. It's usually audible at this volume level. I don't know. Sorry about that, Mothra. And all of you in my audience, dear audience. Because I want you guys to be able to hear when Mothra screeches at the void. By the way, we haven't had a void stream in a while. That might change.
All
right.
You should do it as part of your Patreon drive. Something void something.
Yes, if we meet the Patreon goal, I promise there will be a void stream.
I'm so good at marketing.
Yes.
I'm so good at it.
By the way, this right here, this discussion is one of the only pieces of evidence on my channel that those streams have ever existed.
Ooh.
Yeah, they're super secret.
Yeah.
And building up. We're like copies of a CD that you keep making copies of. And you make a copy of that CD.
No, that's a clone.
Yeah, that's not accurate.
That's a problem in Stargate with the Asgard, but
no,
not in real life.
Are humans real life Stargate aliens as far as anyone knows?
Not as far as I'm aware.
Okay, so probably not a problem here. Those are the ones that look like the Greys, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, my Stargate background knowledge is not nearly as good as my Star Trek.
That's unfortunate. I might have to. I might have to make you binge watch. I might have to make you watch some Stargate with me.
Oh no!
Oh no! Because I love Stargate so much. So I loved Star Trek when I was younger, and that's when I binged all of that. There was this period of time when I was about 10 when Star Trek Voyager was still airing, right? And so I was obsessed with Janeway and B'Elanna. I loved both of those hey, strong female characters who liked science and math like I do. But I also at that time in my life I got sick a lot. Nothing super scary, but my elementary school was infested with black mold, and no one would believe my parents. I was really allergic to it, so every couple weeks I was home for a few days. Was just because I felt bad because there was mold growing in my school that I was really sensitive to. But so I was homesick a lot, which meant I had a lot of time to watch Star Trek: The Next Generation marathons on Spike TV.
Oh man.
And so I binged that. But when I got into high school, I got super into Stargate. And an upsetting number of my life choices are to be more like Sam Carter.
Is that upsetting?
No,
Okay.
I'm very pleased with my life choices. Thank you.
Then there you go. All right, here we go.
Make a copy of that one and then that one. So it's worse every time because you don't have the original. That's how human beings are.
No,
No.
Wow.
take a drink.
Someone in the chat says methylation is not cleaning up debris. It's a metabolic process. Amy K says that. What's your response to that?
That she's basically right.
Metabolic is methylation in itself is a metabolic process. We build up homocysteine levels, and we need methylation to really help detoxify and get rid of those systems. So yeah, it's a biological process.
I mean, yes, biological organisms do methylate things, but it's not synonymous with getting rid of toxins. For example, one of the things that Raw Matt here really likes, even though he doesn't understand it, is epigenetics. And one of the primary ways that epigenetics works is by methylating bits of your chromosome so that the genes there are less likely to be expressed, because if they're wrapped around a methyl tag, or if they're methylated, they're wrapped around there, that methyl group, and so it's harder for them to actually be read in order to be transcribed into RNA. That's not getting rid of toxins. Your chromosomes aren't toxic to you, I promise. So
sorry, is methylation, to me that sounds like the process of either adding or removing a methyl group from
adding a methyl group.
Adding a methyl group. Okay. I'm not a chemist.
I am not either. I am bad at chemistry.
Okay, I don't know what that, because that sounds like a process that's probably either like good in some situations and bad in other situations.
So a methyl group is a CH3 group. So
yeah,
carbon usually has about 4 spots where it can really connect to things. And so it has hydrogen on 3 of these spots. Then there's a carbon in the middle,
right.
And then
so
that
we've got
group
one
connects,
bond left.
Yeah, and that one bond then connects to something else. So for instance, methyl alcohol is different from ethanol because it has a methyl group. So that's, by the way, methyl alcohol is in fact really bad for you. And if you methylate alcohol, it's really bad. So here's an example of methylating being a bad thing. So methylation is not something you can just say that's just how your body gets rid of toxins. It's just not true.
Okay. That's okay. Sorry, because I've been like, I feel like everything Uncooked Matthew here is saying is complete nonsense. But I'm like, I'm trying to understand, like... Yeah.
I wouldn't go so far as to say that no toxins are removed from your body via methylation. Like, that's never a thing. Like, I don't know.
Okay.
There might be some group of chemicals that are bad for you that are rendered less harmful via methylation, and your body does that. I can't say that doesn't happen. Maybe it does. There's a whole lot of chemicals out there, and your body does a whole lot of things with them. So, will I rule that out? No. But is it something that you can just say, well, methylation is just detoxification of your body? No, it's not.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, we got it. We have to have good methylation levels. If we don't, homocysteine levels build up, and that's what causes heart disease. That's why vegans, vegetarians die just as much as meat eaters do, because they pour so much oil all over their foods. So their homocysteine levels get messed up because they lack methylation.
Yeah, things like also, exercise level and cholesterol, not important.
Yeah, also, I don't know what homocysteine is, but that doesn't sound like a single chemical to me. Like, that doesn't sound like a single...
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? That sounds like because homo is generally like homogeneous, right? So that sounds like a state of existence as opposed to an item or a you know what I mean? So when he's saying homocysteine levels, that seems like nonsense to me. You know what I mean? Like that.
Well, I'm double checking because, like I said, I'm really bad at chemistry. One of the only tests I ever failed in my entire life in school was a chemistry test.
Most chemistry I know is atmospheric chemistry.
It's an amino acid. Yeah,
Okay. I was playing language games, which is not what I needed to do. Okay, so it's an amino acid, which exists and is needed to build proteins, but like...
Now, elevated levels does in fact increase your risk of heart disease.
Okay, hold on. Vesta Freya from the chat. DNA methylation is a biological process by which methyl groups are added to the DNA molecule. Methylation can change the activity of a DNA segment without changing the sequence.
Yes, that's what we're talking about with the epigenetics.
Okay. Oh, sorry. My knowledge of biology isn't
No, it's
great,
fine.
so I'm
Keep
okay.
going.
When located in a gene promoter, DNA methylation typically acts to repress gene transcription. Okay.
Yeah, that's one of the major ways, like I said, that epigenetics works. So, basically, epigenetics is something that can, in fact, evolve. Like your likelihood to have methylation in the presence of certain stimuli can evolve. And so, when some particular gene is not needed, or it would be better for it to simply not be expressed, it might in fact be methylated as an epigenetic thing. And so this is somewhat heritable. So if you pass down this version of the methylated chromosome, that methylation is likely to persist in your offspring, although over time that methyl group may in fact go away, in which case, that has reversed the epigenetic thing. But that's how epigenetics are sort of like quasi-heritable. You kind of pass it down, but it kind of goes away over time. So that's of course assuming that you don't continually have the stimulus that caused that epigenetic change in the first place. If you do, then it's just going to persist. But here we go. Let's get some more Matt in.
So we definitely want that gene to not be affecting us, and if it is, we got to be careful and dietarily watch what we're doing. So, so like let's say that. Okay, just say I eradicate. Go ahead. More questions?
Oh, just go on to the next thing. Yeah, let's just destroy evolution. That's the point here.
Okay, people always say, okay, just because you've destroyed evolution, like I can go on. I mean, there's multiple things to bring it down. I mean, we did simplistic ones right now, but I mean.
By the way, I'm also getting that homocysteine is a result of methylation.
Okay.
In your body, so you create homocysteine as you methylate other things, which would also mean then, as part of that process, right? Which would then also mean that if you did less methylation, you should be getting less homocysteine.
Okay, so KH in the chat says homocysteine is an amino acid. It just doesn't build proteins made from demethylation of methionine?
Methionine.
Okay.
Look, guys, you are coming to the wrong place if you're wanting expert chemistry. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, I'm sorry, team. This is...
we should have had a biochemist on.
Yeah. When is he going to talk about... Listen, distant starlight. I'm so prepared to talk about hypercanes, you have no idea.
Oh my goodness.
I can go on, but a lot of people always go, okay, so what? Now you've disproven evolution. What is left for us? Well,
can we drink for conversations that didn't happen?
We absolutely can, because I can't imagine that anyone has ever said that to Rom. Oh, now
okay,
you've
great.
Evolution.
You did it. You've disproven evolution. Now what?
My goodness. What? By spouting off a whole bunch of nonsense in an incredulous tone, Ramat has defeated evolution.
Defeated.
That leaves only really two options. Aliens did it, or God did it. Because if evolution is not true, there's really no other option.
Right. Did you know, even this is funny you bring that up, because when I was an atheist, I even had this thing called alien salvation theory. And I wrote up this whole thing about let's be really good so that if there's aliens watching us, that maybe they'll choose some of us to save, maybe maybe they're looking out for us, or we better be really good. So basically the aliens might offer their technology to save us.
I mean, I read an Isaac Asimov story about that where this guy dies only to find that his mind has been recreated by some alien entity because it found him interesting. But he objects to this. So now he gets to spend some indefinite amount of time for thousands of years being basically tortured by his own existence as a result of an alien cloning his mind electronically.
Okay. That sounds like a great story.
It was really fun. And I'm not positive it was Isaac Asimov. I feel like it was. It was a short story. But
okay.
Basically, I'm glad this guy has a neat little sci-fi idea. I just don't understand the relevance, but maybe Matt understands it and he'll explain it to us.
Maybe. But let's also back up. So let's suppose that turns out we were wrong. And evolution is not the way humans came to exist, right?
Mhm.
Let's pretend that does not leave only aliens or God, right?
There might be other ideas.
There might be other ideas.
Hmm.
So, like, other natural pathways, right, for the development of species. That, there used to be more theories on that, but then the more people that studied it and the more fields that studied it, the more independent evidence that all pointed towards evolution, which is why that's the scientific consensus, right? But like, if somehow it was like, oops, we did an oopsie, then we would just go investigate more natural pathways, right? Like, you don't hear people argue them right now because we have scientific consensus, because it is evolution, because evolution is the answer. Right. But like, that doesn't mean that there haven't ever been proposed other natural processes, right? Anyway, that's my point. Like, oh, if evolution's not true, then it's either aliens or God. Like, no, that's a logical fallacy there, friend. Like, anyway.
I want to say we have a super chat from Era Chamian, which, by the way, I feel less than completely confident that I'm saying your name correctly. If I'm not, please let me know. And if possible, let me know via International Phonetic Alphabet transcription, because then I will almost certainly get it right. I'm pretty good at that. Erichamian says, how many people were diagnosed with a mutated MTHFR gene pre-industrial revolution? 0. Case closed. That's... Yeah, no, it's true. No one was ever shown to have that mutation before the Industrial Revolution. Oh, I'm taking a drink because that's amazing. I love it. That's not an official drink trigger. Yeah.
I'm choosing to hydrate.
My goodness.
Hey, team, this is your reminder to hydrate.
Absolutely.
Especially if you're playing along with an adult beverage.
Yeah, maybe have some water on the side. All right, here we go.
Right?
You're
so
right.
I was trying to get eternal life from that angle as an atheist, because if you don't believe in God, well, then there's aliens, just like you're saying.
Exactly, because something had to happen, and since we don't match the evolutionary model, you're right. There's something going on with us, and we don't match any species of animals.
There's this whole group called Homininidae, which includes animals like the chimpanzee, the bonobo, the lowland gorilla, the highland gorilla, like 8 different species of orangutan that I can't even keep track of anymore. And then there's this Hominoidea that also includes a whole bunch of hylobatids like gibbons and, well, gibbons as a group, they're all just gibbons. But it includes one of my favorite non-hominid primates, the siamang, which is fun because they have big throat pouches, and also some of their toes grow together, like in a single, like big clubby toe, like Penguin from Batman.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah, that's why their species name is actually syndactylus. It means that syndactyly is the condition where more than one digit grows sort of encased in the same, like, flesh. And that's just their normal mode.
That's cool.
Majority of marsupials have syndactyly on digits 4 and 5. So there you go.
Cool.
Anyway.
Yeah. So like, I don't know what he means by match though, because like we are a separate species, just like
all the other separate species.
Yeah, just like all the other separate species.
It's one of the odd things, because
we're real close to chimps, though. Like,
well, so creationists will do this thing where they'll say humans are special for these reasons, and usually the reasons that they say that humans are special are broadly correct, right? Like they do pick out things that make humans unique. But the thing is, you can pick out things that make any species unique, because if a species had literally nothing unique about them, they wouldn't be a species. They would just be part of a bigger species that itself would have unique things about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think my favorite fact that I know about humans, that's like a thing that we do that to our knowledge no other species does, right? Because it's not use tools, it's not stuff like that. it is that we have the ability to empathize with things not like beings not in front of us. So like you can tell me a story, like, and it may or may not be real, right? So we have the ability to empathize
Like
with
maybe a story about an ancient girl with a bunch of disabilities whose family brought her lots of sweets.
Yeah. And I immediately have empathy, right? And feelings about and have a weird desire to bring sweet fruit to this child, right? Like, I would bring you fruit too. And to my knowledge, I think humans are the only people that have the ability to like empathize with stories, which is really cool. Or specifically,
Ceratosaurus, I feel nothing about this child.
oh, how does your top hat feel?
Oh, it's not human either, so it feels nothing.
Oh, well, that's upsetting.
Sorry. Sorry. That. Or okay. But yeah, that is an interesting thing. Although I do wonder if that is perhaps because humans are the only species we know that can understand stories, and maybe if other animals could understand them, maybe they would have more empathy for not present individuals. I don't know. It's a
maybe. Well, so
like philosophical biology kind of thing.
Yeah. But I think there's been some studies done with chimps where chimps will actually be very empathetic and like self-sacrificing to for other chimpanzees that they can see. But if they can't see them, that behavior changes.
Interesting.
Yeah. So it has like, so that's, I made it sound more like a TED Talk and say with stories. But I the science behind it is the, like, we can empathize with beings we cannot see in the present moment.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, here we go.
Not at all. There's nothing that we come even close to. So therefore, there had to be some other kind of conclusion. So now, if I debunk it, what other option is there? Well, if I can just say now, okay, we can prove that God exists. So since we can't look in the clouds because that's not where God lives, unfortunately.
You know what? Technically, Matt here is right. If you look in the clouds, you're not going to find God living there, and we have yet to drink for him getting anything right, and I feel like I need to have it at least once per episode, so we're going to go for it.
Technically right, Matt. God does not live in the clouds.
Yes, I agree. I think virtually everyone should agree that God does not live in the clouds, either because he doesn't exist, or because even if he does, that still isn't where he lives. Actually, I think most like modern God concepts wouldn't have a place where God could live because usually he's like omnipresent. So like, does it make sense to say that he lives particularly anywhere?
Well, most like pagan traditions, they don't have the omnis, so omnipresent doesn't fit there.
That's why I said most modern God conceptions.
Oh, okay.
Because most modern people who are theists are not members of like traditional pagan religions.
I forget. I hang out with a lot of internet pagans.
There's a lot of really cool internet pagans.
That's true. So my sample size is skewed.
On a global scale, that's very small numbers of people.
Yeah.
Also, there are some very uncool internet pagans. You gotta be careful.
That's true. You gotta be really careful with your internet pagan friends.
Yeah,
but I only hang out with the cool ones.
There's the cool ones who just do stuff like brew some mead and like hang out and do cool stuff. And then there's like the white supremacists.
Right. I don't hang out with them. They're not cool.
No, they're not.
A lot of people, atheists, go, well, God, Sky Daddy lives in the clouds and we don't look up and see him, so therefore he's not real. They just don't know scripture. They don't know what God is. They don't know what spirit is. They know that it's not a tangible, testable, observable thing because
I will say a lot of sort of the edgy internet atheist types really are bad at arguing against God because they do say things like this, and it's not convincing to anyone who's a theist. If that's you, pull back and reconsider your tactics. Carrie Bronson for $2 says, as pause, he looks like he's about to do magic. Yeah, Raw Matt, most of my pauses on him have been just like really great, and I don't know what it is. Maybe he just makes a lot of weird faces so that whenever I pause, is a really high chance of him looking like a moron. But then again, he always looks like a moron because he is.
Yeah. And oh, so yeah, to the your edgy internet atheists. I mean, I assume often they're saying like Sky, like they're intentionally being antagonistic and intentionally being like over the top to provoke a reaction, right?
Yeah.
So that's like, that doesn't make it a good That doesn't make it a good argument.
Look,
it's just
if your goal is just to annoy people, then I mean, go ahead. You're doing a great job.
Quite successful.
Right.
Yeah.
If your goal is to have an actual fruitful dialogue where someone has a chance of changing their mind or even just coming to a better understanding of people with opposing views,
Yeah.
really bad tactic. And
Very bad tactic.
I think that second goal is better than the first one.
I find it much more interesting.
Right.
I find other people's, like, because every single human being has really a fundamentally different answer to, like, what they think about, like, the existence of God or gods, right? How they came to that. And that can be a really interesting conversation when it's done with mutual respect. Anyway.
All right, here we go.
God is outside of that. Matter of fact, he states multiple times in the Bible, God cannot show himself to man, it would harm us, it would kill us. So he's outside of that. And we know that there are things that indirectly prove God. For example, there's laws, and everywhere that there's a lawgiver.
You mean scientific laws, and we're going to take a drink because that's not what that means.
That's not what that means.
Okay, so a scientific law is just an expression of a thing that always happens in the universe every time the conditions are met, right? Often that description is mathematical. So for instance, if we take some of Newton's law, like force equals mass times acceleration.
Can I be pedantic?
Okay.
Force does not equal mass times acceleration. Force is equal to the time rate of change of momentum.
Okay, but we're going to go with the high school approximation.
Okay. It doesn't work if you're on a rocket, though.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't work if you're going particularly fast. There's a whole lot of stuff where, like, yes, I am aware that Newton's laws are incomplete.
No. Newton's law, as originally stated, is that it's the time derivative of momentum. Oh. Right. It's approximated to mass times acceleration because you assume that the time rate of change of mass is 0. Which it's not. Well, and like but like that's something you have to take into consideration for any problem that involves fuel.
Right.
Right. So still Newtonian physics, still classical Newtonian physics.
That's why the rocket equation exists.
That's why the rocket equation exists. Right.
We're still going to go with the high school approximation because
for
now it's going to work well enough, right?
Icarus, there are not too many nerds here.
So in certain conditions where we have certain conditions met, we observe that this thing called force, which we measure in things like newtons or whatever, is proportional to both mass and acceleration. And if you double the acceleration, you double the force. If you double the mass, and everything else is held constant, force is doubled. Or we have things like Coulomb's law in electromagnetism. We have things like all these laws. But what all of these are is, hey, every time we do this, we get a predictable result that we can express mathematically. And that's what a law is. It's just a codification of consistent observations. And laws can be overturned. If you found a significant exception to a law, which did happen with some of Newton's laws, right? Like, Einstein made corrections to Newton's laws. And that's why many of them now, in extreme cases, you have to use the Einstein version of the equation. Now, if you're just like, if you're an architect, right, you're probably not going to need Einstein. But if you're trying to do like a global GPS network, you will need Einstein. So there are always preconditions. So if these conditions are met, then this law operates. And sometimes the conditions are impossible or very uncommon. Like we have the ideal gas laws. No gas is an ideal gas. However, some of them are close enough that the law kind of works well enough that we use it anyway.
Yeah. Ideal gas law is very useful. However, you do need to understand its limitations.
Right. And so that's what a law is. And nothing about that requires that someone have set up these laws in advance. That doesn't mean no one did. I'm not here to tell you whether or not to believe that there's a God who set up the universe. You do whatever you want on that point. However, the existence of scientific observations does not necessitate the existence of God.
Right. There is no mechanism in science that is capable of either proving or disproving not only God, but anything that would fall under the concept of supernatural. Can't do it.
All right. Now we're going to hit play before we get into the discussion about whether or not supernatural is something that can be well defined.
Why are there natural
yeah,
laws?
fair.
Why is there laws of gravity, laws of nature, laws of anything? Why would a law exist? And why would they be laws in the first place? That doesn't even make sense.
They're laws because humans call them that, Matt. What they actually are is just how the universe operates. And if you want to ask me why does the universe operate as it does, I don't have an answer really. However, that I don't have an answer does not then necessitate God.
Well, the short answer to why does the universe operate the way it does would be because if it operated differently, it would be a different universe.
And we would have different quote unquote laws that we establish.
Yeah, exactly.
The universe, if it exists, has to operate in a way. The way it operates, we codify it via things that we call laws as an analogy to the actual things that legislatures make, right? So the difference is when a legislature makes a law, it says you're not supposed to do this, and if you do, and we can prove it, we'll do the bad thing to you. Okay, the law of gravity isn't a cosmic suggestion from a legal body with guns. You don't get to just violate the law of gravity. You literally can't.
Right.
So they're only laws by analogy, Matt.
Would have to come from somewhere, and natural laws exist everywhere. So
that's true. Technically true. Natural laws do exist everywhere. That's one of the big important principles of science, is that the way the universe operates is essentially invariant on the basis of both time and location.
We have that. We see order out of chaos, and chaos is supposedly what formed the universe, and it's what formed Earth. Chaos.
Is this now raw Matt talking about Warhammer 40,000? Is that a Warhammer 40,000 reference?
I hope so, because that's the only part of that would make sense.
All right, yeah. So in my mind right now, I'm going to go with Matt here is just giving us his Warhammer 40k fanfic, and given his health prescriptions, I'm going to go ahead and say that Matt is probably a Nurgle cultist. Because although he does react with a lot of anger and threats of violence, so maybe he also has some of the cornate tendencies, you know. But we're gonna, so far I'm going with Matt is definitely a chaos cultist. This is Warhammer 40,000 fanfic, and his two favorite chaos gods are Nurgle and Khorne. Because obviously we know that Tzeentch, the god of knowledge and secrets, has nothing to do with Matt.
Yeah.
Chaos everywhere. They assume that for eons the planet was bombarded by meteors and volcanoes erupting, and chaos exploded and formed order.
I wouldn't just call meteor bombardment chaos per se, but I guess I kind of get it.
I mean, that's certainly, like, especially the period of the late heavy bombardment. I wouldn't want to live in our solar system at that point in time. That sounds like a terrible idea.
True.
That's when a lot of the craters that you see would have formed. But that's after the planets formed, right? There was a lot of leftover material of various sizes that kind of had nowhere to go. And eventually those leftover bits get pushed out to the outer solar system. There's a process, I don't think it's fully understood, or maybe I just don't fully understand it. So there's a time window for when, if you have a protostar with a protoplanetary disk, there's a time window for planets to form. And if they don't form inside that time window, something happens and that disk, it looks like it gets like blown away. Right? Anyway, so that's kind of the very baseline concept of the planets formed. There was leftover bits flying around, running into things, mostly causing craters, and then at some point they get blown away, and that's what our Oort cloud, Kuiper Belt, and the Oort cloud. That's where they go.
By the way, Addicted to Mosh says that Matt is a gene stealer cultist, and that's even more horrifying and insidious. And I don't actually think he's acting much like a gene stealer cultist, because as far as I know, he doesn't have like 18 kids or something. But maybe. And then let's see. Someone else had a thing. Oh yes, this is Fiend Bead said Slaanesh probably finds Matt grotesque. Yeah, I don't want to think about anything to do with Slaanesh and Raw Matt here. We're just gonna not think about those two things together.
This is another way to talk about the Big Bang, right? You're talking about the Big Bang.
Oh yeah, or
Chaos.
abiogenesis, or the planet itself forming. Even after the Big Bang, how did Earth form? They said it formed from eons of volcanoes and molten lava and rock and meteors hitting.
No, jeez. Okay, stop,
Take a drink.
please.
Take a
Gosh.
drink, everybody. My goodness.
No, I'm doing planetary formation in 2 minutes or less. All right. So,
I'll just start a timer.
yeah. Okay. So, once you get okay, we're gonna start with a protostar and a protoplanetary disk.
There we
These things collect under gravity, basically. They're going to collect under gravity. There's more reasons why they start to collect. That's a little more complicated, but that can happen for multiple reasons. But once you have them, right, you have a protostar and a protoplanetary disk, which is gas. It's not even dust particles. Stop my timer. Okay, start.
I didn't actually stop the timer.
So then that gas as the protostar, which is very, very, very hot, it's actually going to start to cool, and which allows that gas to start to solidify, right? As that gas is solidifying, you're going to have a relationship between distance from the protostar and what elements and compounds are able to precipitate out of the dust of the gas cloud and become solid, right? So things with like the highest melt temperature, things that like rock, right? That comes out first and are closest. So that's why our inner planets are rocky, right? Then the further you go out, you're going to be able to start to get what's going to eventually make up the gas giants is going to form together, and the furthest out is the ice, right? Very simply put.
By the way, in terms of ice, astronomers basically mean water and then certain volatile organic compounds. And
yeah, so like methane ice is a lot of what Neptune is.
Carbon dioxide ice too.
Yeah. So there's a lot of CO2 ice on Mars.
True.
But
the permanent ice caps of Mars are basically entirely... the permanent ice caps are almost all water ice. The seasonal extent that they grow and shrink is almost all dry ice, which is actually just the actual atmosphere of the planet freezing onto the poles.
Yeah. Okay. So once you have solids, these guys start first under like Brownian motion and van der Waals forces. Because we're going from like individual atoms, right? Growing there, that's going to allow them to stick together and get big enough until they're affected by gravity. Then they're either going to collide in a way that causes, like kind of slowly, which causes them to coalesce, or they're going to collide and be destructive, right? And that's going to happen. So you have all these things zipping around, and you know, the bigger a thing gets, the more gravity it's got, so the more it's going to collect, etc., so forth. And then you've got planets, right? Which is great. You've got a lot of leftover bits. And those are zipping around. That is going to cause a whole lot of impacts. That's not necessarily a great place to be. Like the Earth's moon, for example, formed by a Mars-sized body colliding with the Earth and ripping off a bunch of its mantle, which then formed, again, under gravity to be the moon, which is crazy and really cool. So yeah, that's a really, really volatile, violent time. But now keep in mind, the Earth, when it first forms, is liquid, because the amount of energy to just bring all the mass of the Earth together under gravity is enough to liquefy the Earth from top to bottom.
So we're talking about a tiny fraction of the heat of the flood.
Oh yeah, a tiny fraction of the heat of the flood. Yeah, so the Earth is liquid, which is what allows it to differentiate. So the heaviest elements sink to the core, which is where we have an iron nickel core. And then we have the mantle, which is silicate and lighter. So that mantle was floating on top of that iron. And then very slowly at least the crust solidified. We still have a liquid outer core, and the mantle, if we dug down and looked at the mantle, it is a solid. On geologic timescales, it convects and behaves as a liquid. And then are we going to have lots of volcanoes? I mean, probably.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. As we're like solidifying from molten rock, right? That's not a great place to be alive. But volcanoes don't form the Earth. They're a consequence of the Earth forming.
What I want to know is, in Raw Matt's mind, if volcanoes are forming the Earth, what are the volcanoes if not on Earth? There's just a space volcano in the middle of nowhere, just erupting lava from nowhere to form the Earth. That's apparently how it's supposed to work.
Apparently.
All right, here we go.
How did the oceans get here? Comets hitting it. For
That probably is provided an insignificant thing. Here's the thing with comets, right? Their isotopic ratio of water in, so basically, the isotopes of oxygen and hydrogen in comets are different than what is typical on Earth, which means they're an unlikely source for that water. What's more likely is that water was simply part of the protoplanetary disk that formed Earth, and it wasn't in a liquid form for the early parts of Earth's history because it was just too hot. It was steam.
Yep.
And as Earth cools, it condenses.
And Earth was massive enough that that water didn't escape, right?
Yep.
For millions and millions of years. What? There's no way. They've even proven that one wrong. Earth was Eden from the very beginning. I can send you the links on this as well. But chaos doesn't build order.
I love how he was just like, this isn't the thing they think anymore, but I'm going to talk about it anyway because I think it's stupid for reasons I'm not going to explain. Thanks, Matt. I don't even know why you brought up the comments if you already knew that it wasn't the mainstream explanation.
Yeah. But no, Earth has been an Eden from the very beginning, according to Ramat.
Yeah.
Set a bomb off in your house and tell me how much order comes out of that. Let me know how that goes.
Yeah.
We're just getting tornado in airplane in a junkyard from a tornado. Let's take a drink for it.
Yeah. So this is the oldie but still terrible of fundamentally misunderstanding entropy, right? Because you can't get order from chaos. It is thinking that entropy and chaos are synonyms.
They are not.
Turns out they really aren't. And so if you have so nothing that I described, right, in my how do planets form run through there. That's all because laws of nature are acting on these particles, right? It's not random processes, and I think that's something that a lot of young Earth creationists struggle with, is the idea of something can be not caused by a human and not be random, right? Like the law of gravity is not a random process,
In principle, at microscopic scales, if you know the status of the system well enough, you can exactly predict how that'll work. Now, are we ever going to know that well enough? No, probably not.
No.
There's the three-body problem. Basically, the problems are with computational power and knowledge, but not with determinism.
Yeah, I think that's fair. So a bomb going off. So what is ordered about that? There's a lot of things actually, right? The dispersal pattern of debris is pretty darn predictable. So there's parts of that are understandable. And then once that bomb goes off, now let's say that bomb went off in space, right? Now other forces that are not humans can act on it. And who knows what would happen, right? In theory, if it was in a vacuum and far away from any other material, it would come back together, eventually, under gravity, if those were the only forces acting. But on Earth, there's lots of other things acting, like Earth's gravity and humans cleaning up debris, right? There's other factors. So this when young Earth creationists use so they try to they confuse entropy and chaos, and then try to go, therefore, the world is always becoming more chaotic, right? As a gross misapplication and misunderstanding of the second law of thermodynamics. It's just very frustrating.
It is. And actually, Sal Cordova just dropped in a chat, Evidence and Reasons.
What's up, Sal?
And I want to say that Sal and I actually have a video about why the second law of thermodynamics is not a problem for evolution. And Sal is a young Earth creationist. And he took the lead on that video. So I encourage everyone to go check that out. I don't have a link handy because I wasn't expecting to need it. But we're actually going to start wrapping things up. Maddie, what do you have coming up on your channel, which, by the way, is linked in the video title?
What? That's super cool. Thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, so what I've got coming up. I released a video today that is actually in my Weather 101 series. I did like a 6-part sub-series of that was talking about the first law of thermodynamics and specifically its applications in weather. So today I released a meteorology example problem of using the first law of thermodynamics. There's a video in that playlist on what is entropy, if anybody wants a 5-minute explanation.
Both of us have content about entropy.
Yeah. And then tomorrow I'm playing Power Rangers, which I'm really excited about.
Mm-hmm.
And either Saturday or Sunday morning of this week, depending on how I feel, we'll do a like morning pseudoscience debunking live stream. I'm debating between finishing up the really bad quantum woo-woo stuff we started this past Saturday. There's 2 more videos in that playlist, and I kind of just want to knock them out. And so that's what's coming up there. So, I filmed today some Weather 101 stuff, and nice. So I'm really excited. I'm kind of getting back in the release schedule saddle after the year it has been so far.
Yeah, it's been quite the year. All right, so for this channel, I'm going to have to pull up a calendar so I keep everything straight, because I always do. All right, so Thursday. Well, actually, first we're going to go to Wednesday. Wednesday, I am running Power Rangers Tabletop RPG. It is the officially licensed RPG by Renegade Game Studios. There will be some light homebrewing because, quite frankly, their Zord rules are terrible. We're going to fix that, but that won't even come up in the first episode, so don't worry about that too much. Like I said, people that you might know who are in that include Maddie, me, TD Lane, Smitty. Also, Bent Hovind has been doing some background stuff. He recorded some music for it. And the plan is that when we get around to adding a 6th Ranger, it'll be Bent Hovind. So he will eventually be in there. It's not exactly a spoiler if you've ever seen more than 1 or 2 seasons of Power Rangers that a 6th Ranger is a thing that happens often. So that'll be the 20th. That'll be at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern, which, as Maddie said, is 6 Central. So there you go. On Thursday, I will be premiering the Andrew Snelling series as a single supercut. So it's a 2-hour video that is all my content on Andrew Snelling's Flood Talk, where he lies extremely blatantly throughout basically the entire talk. My favorite bit is when he said the flood is required for fossilization, and then as evidence, more than half of his examples were from rock that, according to Andrew Snelling's published work, weren't flood rocks. Yeah. And also, I Google image searched most of the things that he said, and it turns out that most of them are just like in the first page of results from Google image searching for the thing that he says it is. So I'm pretty sure he just grabbed it off of Google Images. Because, as a professional geologist, that's what you do.
It's clearly what you do.
Anyway, I don't know what's happening on the 23rd. I don't currently have anything set up. If I don't get a show set up, I will release the next Evolution 101 video with Jackson Wheat. It'll just be a mirror of the video I did on his channel. So there you go. There's that. Let's see. Then next Tuesday should be a Jackson with Jackson Wheat, talking about Dr. Charles Jackson, the
Bad Jackson.
Bad Jackson. He's a doctor of education, and it shows that he's not a doctor of any of the things he's talking about. Also, I question his credentials in education because he's doing a really bad job at educating. Maybe rhetoric. Maybe he should have got a doctorate in rhetoric. I don't even know if you can. Then let's see. Thursday the 28th should start the Kurt on Y series, I think. And then, yeah, that's as far ahead as I'm going to look. But also, do remember the 27th, we have Guns, Magic, and Steel, where Maddie is our game master, or dungeon master, since it is Dungeons & Dragons. We can say dungeon master.
Yeah.
And we are hopefully going to get Cheshire Vic's character to have AIQ that is in the double digits.
Mm-hmm. And not just be a feral cat.
We're hoping to get at least the double digits, maybe the triple digits. You never know.
You never know.
All right, guys. Well, oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, just to say, Chesh, the Tabaxi Road being hit with Feeble Mind is currently my favorite thing I have done to you all.
It has been a lot of fun all around.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Thank you very much. Just want to give one last thing. Please do consider the Patreon if you have the money. There's tiers starting from $1 all the way up to $100. If you want to go give me $100 a month, I don't suggest that you do. That's crazy, but it's an option. Like I said, I think it's 12% discount for annual pledges. Just always appreciated. And yeah, guys, I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your week. Stay safe out there, and I'll talk to y'all later. I just want to take a moment to thank all my patrons and channel members, especially those pledging $20 or above. Ben Tovand, Denny5252, Ian Chen, John Ackerman, Chris Love, Landon Knoll, Sphincter of Doom, Star Runner, and Patrick Dennis. It's because of my channel members and patrons that this channel can keep on going at the blistering pace of 2 to 3 and almost always 3 uploads per week. And because I do run this channel at a slight loss, it is very important that anyone who can afford to and really likes my content, please do consider joining the Patreon or joining the channel with the link below. Patreon link is in the description. On Patreon, you can join at a 10% discount if you join for an annual subscription. And if for some reason you can't afford it, or an annual or monthly pledge isn't for you, there are always other ways to help out the channel. There's an Amazon wishlist linked in the description. There's also a merch store full of almost everything that Teespring makes. Heck, you can get my face on a onesie. And of course, if monetary support isn't something you can do, please just like and share this video, and remember to subscribe if you haven't already. And don't forget, if you're subscribed, turn on that notification bell.